Welcome to Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers, a podcast for women of color and first gen who are breaking generational cycles and glass ceilings by going places no one before them has ever gone. I'm your host, leadership coach, and eldest daughter of immigrants, Mariela De La Mora. I left a 16-year marketing career to create a multiple six-figure-a-year coaching business as a single mom. Each week, you'll learn how to build unshakable self-trust, become in demand, lead with confidence, and make more money by being more of who you are. Ironically, this workshop and Telegram was really just like me being a student of self-trust again, because I really was just like, okay, when I think about why I started my business, how I started my business, my whole life, really the last 10 years or so has really been about self-trust. And I was like, what can I put out into the world that really is just like a byproduct of just like a pull of something that I'm like, I think people need to hear this. This is the pattern that I've seen in my clients. This is like what's changed my life. That I was like, this is all it needs to be. Like, let me just put this out in the world. And sometimes it's the simplest things that are the most profound. So some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today is not just like where I have seen that my own self-trust has gotten unraveled, but when I really studied my clients, like the last few months, because I was redoing the curriculum and reclamation, a lot of what I was doing was like, how have they been able to do what they've done? Like, what have the common threads been? And through that and having the conversations and really looking at why, I really started to see the themes. And that's my job, right? Like, that's my job as a coach always, is that when things are working for my clients, I want to be able to say, oh, I know what's happening, or I see what they did, right? So that was really what I've done like the last few months is I've really been, number one, like a student of my clients, of figuring out how they've been able to do what they've done, what those common threads were, and then really tying it back to like the self-trust was what was able to create the bigger results, because self-trust doesn't require you to change your business model. It doesn't require you to do more or do the most. There's almost like a floodgate that can open to us that is inspired by our access to ourselves first. And I honestly think like 80% of everything is that. And then there is like the 20% on top of that is like, hey, let's troubleshoot. Let's look at your messaging, like the strategic aspect of it. But I think that's what I really noticed is that like, even in my own business, the majority of my results have come from me strengthening my access to myself. And that the results of that are never just limited to your business. They're everywhere, right? So that's what I wanted to talk to you all about today. But first, just before we get started, wanted to see if you can drop in the chat, like a word of how you're feeling, or just something that you are wanting to take from today. Like what's something that you're wanting to get from today. What I'm going to do too, is I'm going to go through the workshop, and then you know that at any point you also can, oh, hi, Kira, my client's joining, is you can drop questions at any time. So Princess, who is on my team, is going to look at the chat and take those questions. And then when we pause to answer questions, we're going to have them there and she'll send them to me like privately. So just know you can drop questions at any time, but I'm going to kind of pause at different points to just see what the questions are. And yeah, Patty, I love the idea of my results come from me better accessing myself. Yeah. I'd love to be grounded. Okay. Yeah. And it really is so much of this. And I'll talk about like why it's so much more prevalent, like why the aspect of self-trust as a leadership skill is so much more important in business, because it's not based on the same structures as like when you're in the education system or in the workforce. There is so much more of like access to self and self-trust. Curious to learn more about self-trust because we tend to stand in our own way. Absolutely. That's been the case for me. I struggle with finding the gap point for how I can offer something different in my business. Okay. I think the thought leadership part will be good for you, but even something there, sometimes it isn't even the thought leadership part. It's actually like just giving yourself credit for your expertise. So I think the expertise part might be relevant there, because sometimes it's sitting right in front of us. Like we think it needs to be this other thing, but our genius is typically like the most obvious thing, the thing that feels the easiest to us. And we're already delivering a service. We already have expertise, but sometimes what I'll see, and I'll go into the presentation, is you are delivering expertise. You're talking to people about how you're obviously an expert, but there is a lens missing, there's a you missing, there's a lived experience missing, there's a thought leadership aspect missing. Like it's almost like the unfolding. So no matter what we go through today, you're probably going to find that one of the three areas is like, ooh, this is the opportunity for me. Like that's going to be the next thing. It's not something that I would say you have to implement like all three. Like I actually think that for my clients, it's been one of these three areas. It's either been marketing, belief in their expertise, or their thought leadership. Practicing being seen and the vulnerability hangover. Yeah, that is, yes. Gap point. I love this teaching on this. Self-trust is so foundational. Okay, yes. I'm also when I get to this one part, I was recording curriculum before I went on vacation. So I'm going to teach y'all my belief bookmarking plan in like a nutshell when we get to that section. That has changed my life. Like I will talk to you about how I created that. If you haven't already like listened to my podcast on when I've talked about it, like my frameworks kind of came from like a dark place, but I think that is the reason why they're so strong and so simple, because they came from like the opposite of trusting myself. Thank you all for being here. Again, I kind of mentioned this at the top of the call. This whole thing was just like an idea that I came up with before I went on vacation. And I was like, Mariela, why are you doing this? You're like in the middle of outlining curriculum. You're recording it before you leave. I took 5 weeks off, but technically it was like 2 working weeks to hand over everything, be with my daughter and come back. But I was like, okay, if this is pouring out of you, like you just need to do it. And so that's where we are right now. And I think to be truthful is that launching really, really for everybody, it brings up like all of your darkest like thoughts about yourself. And so I think at the end of that, I was just like, whoo, okay, I have been coaching and teaching on these things. Like, where do I need to be a student again of the things that I believe? And so this is where this came from, because I was like, what honestly like changed my life? And as a leadership coach, I'm a leadership and business coach, but the way that I teach business is through leadership. And the way that I define leadership is access to yourself, like knowing of yourself and being able to, effectively lead others. So with that, this is where this came from. And thank you all for being here. All right. So today, what we're going to go over is the 3 common areas that I've seen where self-trust impacts business results. They are also the common threads in my own clients' successes where they didn't change their business model, they didn't change their offers. This, in full transparency, was folks who had a pretty validated offer already that they've sold, but they lost self-trust in one of these areas. And this is what allowed them to like double their results or hit their goals in half the time and all of that. So that it doesn't mean you need to have a super validated offer for this to work for you, because I've also used these concepts on myself when I was much less sure about what I was offering, but take what you will from that. So we're going to learn how to trust your marketing by leading with your gifts and understanding what those gifts are by looking at data in your business. Number 2, trusting your expertise and the value of your services, and like, how can you come back to that? Because a lot of times we lose belief in that, and then that trickles into everything else. And how to make your messaging more potent by doubling in on your thought leadership. So I have some prompts and some questions. They're part of the curriculum, not the full thing, but because I didn't want to overcomplicate it, but I'm going to walk you through some prompts like that. And nobody teaches thought leadership the way that I teach it. The way of teaching thought leadership is directly connected to a need in the market. So housekeeping is keep yourselves muted, but feel free to use reactions. I love to see reactions, hearts, whatever you want to drop in. We're going to hold a Q&A at the end of the workshop. So before I go into talking about reclamation, if you all want to hang on for that, I absolutely want you to, but we will hold a Q&A at the end of the workshop so that you will be able to ask questions, because sometimes I'm gone to things and you don't get to ask questions until the very end. I want you to actually walk away and be like, cool, I know exactly what my main areas of opportunity are. And then applications to reclamation will open. So about me, I'm a leadership and business coach. I work primarily with first gen and women of color. I was a marketing director for 16 years. So began before there were smartphones, before there was social media. So I've definitely seen my fair share of change. There's just a lot of things that I think has lended itself to being a leadership coach, because I'm just like, leadership, a lot of it is just seeing what is happening in the market, seeing what's happening in your life and kind of adjusting accordingly. I bring a lot of my marketing lens into the work that I do. I still very much have a marketing brain in terms of like what makes sense to me and how I like to validate that things make sense. So as much as I've mentioned this before, like I'm a mindset person, but I'm not. I'm very logical. Like it needs to make sense to my logical marketing brain. And so the way that I even teach and what I'm going to talk to you about today is very much like, how does this make sense though? Like, how does this make sense from a marketing perspective? Or how does this make sense from a logic perspective? I need to understand that to get on board with it. I'm an eldest daughter. I'm a single mama. My daughter, Adriana, we call her Pi because she was born at 3:14 p.m. She's 7 and she's the love of my life. And she keeps me on my toes. She is very lit, very different personality for me. And yeah, 4.5 years into business, I brought in just a smidge under 1 million in revenue, which I have come to more deeply appreciate, even though it's so easy to compare myself to my mentors and just be like, why am I like making 1 million a year? And I'm just like, this is phenomenal. Like I got a lot going on. I'm a sole breadwinner, all of that. So this is just a season also of just deeper appreciation. And so that is a message for you all as well to honor the miracle of what you have created. So my mission is to help more women of color and first gen become sought after thought leaders, specifically through the skills of marketing, mindset, and leadership that positions you as the one of a kind experts that you are. And I want you all to be commanding a premium for your genius. So part of what we're going to talk about today is related to positioning yourself as an expert. And it doesn't have to do so much with years of experience. It's more about like actually giving yourself credit for all of your expertise. My clients have booked out. They've quit their jobs. One of them is doing a 7-week travel around the world right now. They've surpassed, the 6 figures. They moved into their dream homes. One of my clients, a single parent, was able to do that. I'm also a very life coachy business coach. I've had clients that I've worked with where a lot of what we did was like helping to heal their relationships with their immigrant parents, become digital nomads, become the present moms. So I really am like, I look at holistically, like supporting my clients and what it is that they need in this season of life, because business and life are not separate. Business is personal. And oftentimes what we need is to create capacity and support in our lives so that we can show up for our businesses. And no one knows that better than the single mom who has to, do a lot. So what might be coming up, and what I've seen in some of my clients and even in myself in certain seasons is like, you're doing well, but like sometimes I've heard folks say, I feel like I'm hiding behind my offer and I'm not really in it. And like, I'm ready to make a name for myself. So what I help my clients do is that they become a brand, like they become the thought leader brand, meaning like people are just down with you and whatever you've got to say, they adore you. They think you're a genius. They love you. They love your story. And so like you have these offers, yes, but you very much are the person that they are bought into. So that's what that means. Or you're great, you're great at what you do, but you want to believe it and act like it more often, or you could be charging more. There's people with less experience than you charging more, but you don't necessarily believe it. And you're booking, or you could be booking clients, but it feels like a fluke because you don't actually know how you did it. So therefore it doesn't feel sustainable. So we want to overthink less in general. Just overthinking, loud brain does not usually lend itself to, number one, enjoying your business. Number two, accessing your best ideas. And you want your marketing to feel easier. Like, I think that a lot of people struggle with marketing because of what they make it mean, because marketing can be this whole PhD, but it doesn't have to be necessarily for most people. Like, it can go as deep as you need it to go, but I think that we'll overcomplicate it too soon. So less formulaic, more you. Own your expertise and grow your reputation as a thought leader. So I think the belief trap that I want to speak to is other people have the formula and I need to get it right. Like, other people have the formula and I need to get it right. Which is so like, I just need to outsource it to someone. Like, they have all the answers. And there's a difference between a mentor or a coach having guidance and saying, here's a best practice or here's what I would recommend, versus just a straight up formula that like everybody follows. Because in order for any business to be successful, you need to contextualize. What is your business? Who are your ideal clients? How aware are they that they have this problem that you help them with? I have some clients where their clients are used to solving their problem a different way, and they're still in the like problem awareness. And then I have other people who don't need to be sold on that they need that, like that service, but they're making a decision in a different way. So there's literally no way that there is a like one formula that works for everybody because it's marketing. Like that would be like me going into a job interview as a marketer and being like, yep, I know exactly how to sell your product. And I haven't asked a single question. Like that doesn't make sense. So this is where I like to bring my marketing brain into what I do. And thought leadership requires self-trust because you literally don't see anybody doing what you're doing. All right. So the reality, instead of somebody has the formula, so instead of other people have the formula and I need to get it right, it's really self-trust is your number one money-making skill, regardless of your business model. And specifically, we're going to talk about self-trust or belief in you and your expertise, like actually giving yourself credit for how freaking good you are. This is a lot of what I do as a coach. I'm like, do you realize what you just said to me? Do you realize in that conversation that you had with the client? How did you know that? Do you realize that you know that? How do you know that? Like you're just nonchalantly dropping this expertise and yet you're second guessing yourself and you're a genius. Like, how did you know that? I didn't know that. So belief in your expertise, belief in how you're marketing and why you're marketing that way, not how the person in your group program is marketing, not how your coach is marketing, right? You and why you're doing it that way. This is why I have clients, Patty, who's on the call. We talked about it. I was like, you don't even need social media. You don't even need like content repurposing. Like, we don't even need that. You don't even have capacity. You have all these clients. It's fine. You can do you when you know why you're doing it, right? And trust in your thought leadership. So, and because Reclamation is a leadership mindset and marketing mastermind, we're going to do expertise, marketing, and thought leadership is basically one of each category. So when you believe in it, you will compare yourself less. You'll start investing differently. You'll invest in skills versus tactics. And there's a very different tactics is post 3 times a day, do webinars, and then do blah, blah, blah. Like when people are telling you what to do, that's a tactic. Strategy is how you make decisions based on you. You'll feel less reactive and you won't look around or look like anyone else in the market. You'll feel excited and creative in your marketing and you will regard yourself and your experience highly. So quick before I jump in, like my story with self-trust in my life was being an eldest daughter, not really being allowed to explore like, what do I want to do and who I am? A lot of it is like, you need to do what we tell you to do and you better do it right and you better be the best. With that, got married to my first boyfriend. It was a toxic relationship. I was gaslit, lied to, cheating, all the things. And this whole thing, I was just like, I literally listened to everybody else but me. Like, I wish that I could be like my best friends who didn't care what people thought about them, right? And I reached like a point at 31 where I was like, I don't even know who I am. I feel like I can't listen to myself. And I started to leave myself messages in the moment of when I was like, you need to leave him. No, you're not asking for too much. Like, no, you're not crazy. I would write myself letters and it would be because I knew that the minute that I talked to him, he would make me think I was wrong. So I needed to go back to that letter. And that was the beginning of belief bookmarking was you're not crazy. You're not asking for too much. No, all these things. I started to write myself notes. Because if I thought about it and I was like, Mariela, if you can only trust yourself 1% of the time, what can you do in that 1% of the time to bottle that up so that when you inevitably lose it, because you know you will, what are you going to come back to make the 1% be 5%, be 10%, right? So with that, I started a whole thing. Like from 31, it seems like crazy. I left. The next time the cheating happened, I left literally the same day. Packed my shit and I moved out and I filed for divorce. It was the only person I had ever been with in my entire life. And I was 31. He moved out, filed for divorce. And at that point, I started to be like, oh, well, what else can I do? Oh, what else feels wrong in my life, right? Like what else feels like I'm just like, I don't even really want this. So I quit my job. I solo traveled. I moved to London. I started to really just trust myself more. And there's no way that I would have been able to do what I did if I didn't start like honestly, it wasn't even like small. I think that it just became like, what else can I do when I can listen to myself? What else can I do when I can trust myself? And so what wound up happening was the trust got bigger and bigger, and that I wound up deciding that I was going to leave the workforce long before I knew what I was going to do. So this was like in 2019. I got offered a job. The total comp was like $250,000 because this is like tech in, the Bay Area. There's like big money, but big expenses here as well. And I said no. And I didn't know why. So it was like the self-trust just kept the stuff that would have been way terrifying before just didn't seem terrifying anymore. So I decided to say no. to the job offer and I started my business. I didn't know what my business was going to be and promised myself when I was going to quit my job. And as soon as I did, my company laid everybody off like two days later because of the pandemic where everybody lost their jobs. So my whole story is just a self-trust story, but a lot of it came back to building that skill. The way that this looked at my business, and because this comes down to like what I'm going to teach you today, was I started out with what I would say is like naive confidence, where I was just like, yeah, like whatever, like I'm a marketer. I don't have any experience coaching people, but I'm just going to teach them what I know about marketing. And I think because it was naive, I actually didn't get in my own way. Like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've heard this a lot where people like actually experienced results, but they didn't realize that what they were doing. And what happens is we'll incrementally put more pressure on ourselves when we're like, no, we can't market like that. No, it needs to be this now. And like, oh, but that's never going to work again, you know? And so what wound up happening was I thought, oh, well, you can't do that again. Or you can't market like that anymore. You need to be more strategic and more polished. And so my monthly recurring revenue dropped. People started giving me no's on sales calls. I really didn't believe in myself. And what I realized in this year of like, oh my God, what if I can't pay my daughter's daycare and I can't pay my rent? And I was like, what happened? It felt like I had all these clients wanting to work with me and I was booked out and then I lost it and nobody wanted to work with me. That's what it felt like. It felt like I lost it. I realized later on, like you can never lose your success because every single day you actually only get more capable. Like you only get smarter, you only get wiser. All of your failures even teach you stuff. Like you only ever can get more valuable, but somehow we think that we've lost it, but we've really only lost our self-trust. So 2021, that's what happened. And I lost, like I said, my income went down. And it happened again with the second launch of Reclamation. Like I had a very like my first launch, I just like told people about it and they joined and I didn't even have like a public launch. And it got in my head and I was like, there's no way you can do that again, Mariela. Like I had planned to fail, honestly, like way before it ever happened. When I went back and I looked at the conversations I was having with my coach, she's like, why are you planning to fail? Like you don't need to fail. And I was like, I just don't think I can do that again because it was a big launch. The first one it was just under 6 figures. And it just felt so shit to show up to that launch because I lost my belief. And I was like, why am I thinking this when like I didn't even have a validated program before? I didn't even have a promise. And like now I have client results and I have more experience, but yet I'm doubting myself more. And the results showed it. I got re-signs, but nobody signed up during the public launch. I had folks still come to me privately, all of that, but the actual open cart, nobody signed up. And I kept that to myself for a while because I was like very ashamed. I was like, oh my gosh, like I did something wrong, whatever. But I really, when I look back at the coaching I was asking for, I was like, I just decided to stop believing in myself like way before. I way got in my head about how I was marketing. I started to change the way that I was talking. It felt very like formulaic. And you'll know when you start to do that, when you're like, I don't even sound like myself. So that's what happened. And I noticed the pattern of doubt was in the 3 areas, right? So one was I was overthinking my marketing. I had a very loud brain and I had what you call like blank slate syndrome, where it's like you show up and you're trying to write a post and you're like, what do I even do for a living? Like, I don't even know what to say. My expertise, like I really just started to doubt that like I was good at what I did. And my thought leadership at the time, I was making myself wrong because I was like, do people even care about like thought leadership or do they care about like, you know, how generational trauma patterns show up in business? Like, is this too deep? Like, I was just really in my head, right? So what I changed was that year in 2021 in my marketing, I went back to my client intake forms, what they were saying they wanted, like their actual data. So this is back to the breadcrumbs and the stuff you drop in the forest to be like, no, why am I doing this? My clients were telling me what they wanted and they were telling me why they wanted to work with me. And so I realized I'm over here promoting all this and telling myself I need to be a different person when in reality, all the data is showing people want to work with you because of your story. People don't even care that much about your marketing background. I was way overinflating that. Like people don't give a shit about that. They liked these certain things and I totally just stopped doing it. So I went back to my client intake forms. This is what I'm going to ask you all to do too. This is what I ask all my clients to do is gather feedback from your discovery call forms and your new client intake forms of what is it that they desire? Like, what are their goals? And then why do they want to work with you specifically? I rebuilt my belief in my expertise. I started to leave myself voice memos in moments of high belief. Like when I got off of a client call and I was like, oh my God, that was such a good call. I would leave myself voice memos that I have heard dozens of times to this day. And I left myself one called "You Are a Good Ass Coach." And I described what I just helped this client with. And I was like, this is so complex. Nobody would have been able to do this. This particular client was in a breakup and it was so hard for her to get out of this relationship. And I know because I was in this relationship before where it was an avoidant man and we kept going back and forth and she couldn't focus on her business. So I was like, dude, I'm the perfect coach for her because I was in this type of relationship. I was able to coach her in her life. And so she could start her golf apparel business. Like I left myself this voice note and I started to do that over and over again to be like, you're such a good coach, Mariela. Here's what you did. When you forget it, here's what I want to tell you. That was belief bookmarking. That was the version of me writing myself letters when I was trying to break up with my ex and I couldn't because he kept making me think I was crazy. This was this like, no, 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 no. You're going to lose your belief, but you're going to bottle it up while you believe it. So that's what I did. That changed my life. It felt like insane at the time. Like it was just sales call after sales call. Like I got booked out. Thought leadership. I also started to look again at like, oh, well, people are asking me to speak. Like, what are the topics? And I also just started to be like, you know what? Fuck it. What if I just like posted all the things I believed in and I stopped doubting myself on and making myself wrong? And I remember there was one particular post where 3 different new clients cited it. And so that was like literally $24,000 of sales from one post. And it had to do with me saying, I don't content batch. I don't have content pillars. I'm a marketer. Here's how I do it. And this is why. And everyone was like, oh my gosh. So it's just an explanation of like, I really just stopped not giving a fuck, but it's like, I stopped just beating myself up for all the things I thought I should be. And I really was like, no, but how do I grow a business as a busy mom? How do I create content? And people just really needed to hear that. The results were that year of 2021, I went from selling 70K the first 10 months, and then I sold 80K the last 2 months. Same one-on-one offer. I didn't introduce anything. I didn't change the offer. I didn't launch, nothing. Same thing with reclamation. I went from 0 signups in the June public launch to 17 in the November launch. Same year, same offer. That's why I'm sharing those as case studies. So with this, by rebuilding confidence in just one of the 3 areas, this is what my clients have done without changing anything else in their business. So Mariana hit her entire annual goal by May. Patty sold twice what she sold last year by May. That's now a different number, which we won't talk about, but that's now way more. Betty hit her biggest quarter in 3 years. This Q1, Lorraine doubled her income. Michelle doubled her income last year. These were all just tweaks. And then Danny was able to more than double her rate and sell it right away. So the 3 strategies. Number 1 is getting clear on your thought leadership and the unmet need that you serve in the market. So I'll talk to you a little bit about like, what does that mean when I say an unmet need? So your thought leadership is your response to the unmet need or gap that you serve. Let me know in the chat if you guys have questions on like what this actually means. I'm going to teach you how at the end of this. Like I'll give you a couple of questions, but any business, any successful business isn't just a niche. It's like you're in a niche, but like what is lacking in that you specifically serve? That's the unmet or underserved need or the gap in the market. And then you speak to that gap with your ideas, with your innovation, all of that. That's where the demand is. And the reason that people doubt this is because you literally have to do and say what other people aren't. And you start to compare yourself when you don't have it. And so my coaching to my clients is like, how do they have nothing to do with you? They literally have nothing to do with you when you're really strong in your thought leadership, right? But when you doubt your thought leadership, that's when you start to compare yourself. You compare yourself, you make yourself wrong, you water down your voice. But when you trust it and you know what your thought leadership is, you have a strongly positioned brand. You have your own arena, even if there are countless people who have your same job title as a business owner. You compare yourself less. You have more aligned clients. You have fewer price objections because people are like, there's nobody that does what you do. And your future clients will stop shopping. They will choose you before they're ready to work with you. So they'll say things like, when I blank, I can't wait to work with her. Like they've already decided that you're their person. And this happens like all the time where people have already decided in their mind that you're their person. And that's thought leadership because they're not shopping anymore. So I'll share what like strategies right after this, but what this looked like with Mariana, for example, she was already brilliant, genius, had a successful business. So it wasn't that she didn't have a validated offer, all of that. It's just that coming back to business after having a baby, she shared this on my podcast, which is the only reason why I'm saying this. She said herself, she's like, I know that I'm coming back into business without a drop of self-trust. Like, I know that if I'm in a space that's going to help me anchor back into why I'm doing what I'm doing, anchor back into her thought leadership. She's like, I know that I can hit my goals. I know that it's actually just me. I know I don't need to necessarily change my offers. So what we did was we clarified the unmet needs in the market as they stand now, because she is a curriculum design expert, but the market before she had a baby was a little different, where I feel like people regard it differently now. There's more of an awareness around it. So we kind of revisited, okay, what is the level of problem awareness now? What is the level of that now? And she refined it. She kind of tested out some messaging. She validated that within the mastermind itself. She went out, she retested it. She booked clients, brand new clients and repeat clients, and just being in a community of women of color who believed in her and added fuel to her fire. She hit her whole goal, which was to make 30% more this year and to make it mostly from new clients. So that did happen. So here's the part for you guys. To get clear on what is the unmet need that you serve, here's how you know. When your clients come to you, they have tried multiple things that have only partially helped. They've tried to solve it this way. They tried to solve it that way. They kind of got it, but they didn't. And they're still sitting in the absence of the solution. Or they're like, this is just the way things are. This is just the way that I am. So I don't know if this has come up, this is exactly how you know that you're sitting in a gap. Or you serve a population who is not seen, especially by those who sell to them. So if you think about like examples of unmet needs, is we have leadership coaches for women of color or first gen. Because if you were a white man coaching someone on leadership who is a woman of color or first gen, you would totally miss the lived experience aspect. That's an unmet need in the market. It's a very like white space, for example, right? So that's an unmet need. I think about Kira in my mastermind, like she's helping folks to solve launch problems with data when they're accustomed to solving launch problems through coaching. And so she's having to explain, you're solving this problem in this way, but you actually need to solve it this way. There's so many people solving it in that way, and they're still sitting in the problem. So that her gap in the market is launching and how people are solving it in a way that's not actually solving their problem, right? So we're all sitting in something where there's an unmet need, there's a gap, or buyer behavior is to solve it in a different way. And we're trying to explain like, here's why you're actually experiencing that and how I can help you. So that's your unmet need and your gap. Or there was a shift in the market that created the gap. We saw this in the pandemic where there were entire new business models created because people couldn't like go to gyms or people had to stay home with their kids. We're seeing that, to an extent now where, there's folks that are worried about like the economy and all the different things that I think like now just there's a shift and people are desiring something different. So what is your solution to that unmet need? That need exists. What are they doing? But should they be doing instead? Right? And why are you a credible spokesperson for this topic? So this could also be your lived experience. Like this could also be like, I know because I went through this, or I know because in my past job, I used to do this. And even though it's different, but like you can talk about what is it that makes you a credible spokesperson. And what are some hills you're willing to die on when it comes to this topic? Meaning like, I don't care what anybody says. This is what I believe. And I'm going to keep saying this like every single day because I believe in it so strongly. Even if someone doesn't necessarily think that, your own conviction is very attractive to your ideal clients, right? Like your own conviction as to why you believe what you believe. So one resource for this is just episode 6 of Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers. We talk about thought leadership. And so it'll go more into depth on that. But this is how you get clear on it. So whatever you are marketing or selling, speaking to unmet needs is how you'll generate demand faster than just talking about what it is that you do in your process. I'm like, anybody can sell a solution to a process, but what makes it different is your thought leadership. What makes it different is what is the unmet need in the market that you serve. And so this is why I say thought leadership is not so much about like being the go-to in your niche. it doesn't have to be that. It literally can just be somebody who innovates for their people. And you can be the expert right now when you innovate for your people. And that's why it helps you trust yourself, because you don't need to hold years of experience against yourself because you're already the expert now. Other signs of thought leadership is if you have clients, people who aren't your clients refer you and they say, oh, you need to go to so-and-so for that. She's your go-to person. That's probably your thought leadership because they're not your clients. Or if you've been asked to speak on the same topic or angle more than once and you didn't pitch, that's also a sign that that's your thought leadership. And those are the things that people want to hear from you that will make you stand out like immediately. But it isn't just from a being different for being different sake. It's being different in a meaningful way. And that's how I define thought leadership and thought leadership that creates demand. And also just self-trust and self-belief, because you're like, no, this matters. I know why I'm doing this. I know that this is needed in the world and nobody is talking about it and I'm going to talk about it, right? So that's number one, is getting clear on your thought leadership. Number two is your expert identity. So this is the part in my story where I was like, do people even want to work with me? Am I even like a good coach? And like, where you're literally just not giving yourself credit. This is sort of where you'll have beginner identity. And it's just like, no, you actually have like so much experience, but you're not carrying yourself like it. And sometimes what I'll see is people will hold like years of experience against themselves. Like, oh, but I've only been in business X amount of time, but you actually have a whole past life of things that you're leveraging and accessing in your toolbox every single day. Don't overlook your transferable skills. If you were applying for a job, you'd have to give yourself credit for all the things, including your life, including your failures and mistakes. Like, how do all of those things go to work for your clients all the time and for your community? And sometimes we dismiss our gifts because they feel too easy. This happened with one of my clients where she's like, I didn't value them because they came easy. And most of us are used to like working hard to be successful, right? And so what this will also happen is I will see people price themselves and I'm just like, okay, you definitely could be charging more than that. And I wouldn't ask you to raise it just for that. But expertise wise, like, you're brilliant. But if you don't see yourself that way, you're not going to price that way. And you're actually not going to feel confident even in the price that you have. So this is why this part is so important, because it does affect not just your own confidence, but how you price yourself. And you'll also experience a little bit of like bottomless belief syndrome, which is like, no matter how much evidence you have, no matter how much praise, no matter how much your clients love you, you're still going to not think highly about yourself and you're still not going to regard your expertise highly, which is why things like belief bookmarking, which I'm going to talk to you about, are so important. Because if you're not bottling it up, it's just like putting it in a leaky ass bucket where nothing's ever going to be enough. And like, I'll see this with my clients and I'm like, well, where's all that going? Well, what happened to the thing last month? Like, you're not even taking credit for that because it's just going in this leaky ass bucket. So we have to patch up the bucket through systems that are like, no. This is what we did. This is who we are. Let's not forget. Because it's going to be very hard to grow to fill up this bucket of belief and of possibility and abundance and sales if you're putting it in a leaky bucket. So with this, when you trust it, you do see yourself as experienced, even if it's your first year of business. Your marketing oozes confidence. You bring deeper aspects of your expertise to your marketing that you didn't see as relevant before, because you're like, no, but that's different. But that was my life. Or like, yeah, but that was technically a failure. So like, I don't want to talk about it. But it really does build that identity. You also will close freaking sales calls because your own confidence of, I know my shit and I know that I can help you. That's what closes sales calls. Right? Even if you didn't follow the process, I've had sales calls where I know that I handled it trash in terms of like the process and all of that, but my own conviction, I was like, no, I got you. I know exactly what it is. That is what helps. And that's expert identity. And then you have no mind drama about your price. So case study, Patty, I don't know if you're still on the call, but I used you as a case study because we talked about how at the beginning, you had these corporate contracts, you were very successful. People adored you and loved you. But then it's like, okay, if you're not taking credit for the clients that you've called in, and we do this for a number of reasons, then it almost feels like that success isn't ours. And then that starts to leak into how much you charge because you don't have the belief, because you feel like, yeah, but somebody kind of gave this to me, but it wasn't really mine. And so also, it's like, okay, we don't even need to worry about social media because you're working with organizational contracts. So it's like, well, what creates organizational contracts? Is it social media, or do they even go to social media to vet you? Or do they just do a quick glance on your LinkedIn and they mostly go based on the referral? Like, what do they need to make a decision? And are we worrying about the wrong things? Right. And you said something so beautiful, Patty, if you're still on, is I was dismissing my gifts because they came easily to me. And I thought that was such a beautiful realization. And like what shifted was auditing past client sources. Like, how have they found you? You did a success receipts. The success receipts really looked at like, okay, your past clients have come to you through networking in person, building deep relationships, and then those relationships referring you to other folks. And they would be things where nobody could access that if they didn't have the relationship. So that's your magic. And that wasn't a bad thing. It's just, okay, hey, you don't actually have to worry about for short-term sales. You don't have to worry about that. Social media and visibility can be for the long term, but right now, this is what's working for you. And taking credit for all of the experience that she had before she started her business that was super relevant to the work she was doing, instantly was like, wow, I'm so much more experienced than I was giving myself credit for, because all of my past lives, my past jobs, all of these things are feeding into the work that I did, which allowed her to raise her rate by 40%. She doubled the contract revenue that she secured versus last year already. That's now way more. That's like triple now. And then booked. And you have the multi-year contracts. And then we're focusing now on restructuring her team in order to help her, support these clients, systems, just to simplify things, and like what expertise does she need on her team, and then long-term lead gen and visibility. And then with another case study with Danny, first year of business, this makes sense. Danny was phenomenal. So this isn't even like anything. This is just obviously first year. She did a lot of changes, but she's brilliant. And she doubted her ability to coach folks at like a certain level, even though she personally left a C-suite job, right? And so started out, the offer was like a $2,500 offer. She solved an entry-level problem. Fine. I think we all can solve entry-level problems. But eventually, this year, it was really about identity, to be like, you can coach C-suite people at Skims. Like, she had a client come to her who works at Skims who was like a high level executive. And she's just like, no, I can actually help these people. And so elevated her offer, elevated her messaging to speak to a higher level problem because she believed she can solve it. She was able to raise her price and sell it right away. She put herself in rooms with those higher level clients. And so like, that's an example where you're not changing your offer. You're just bringing the expertise that you give yourself credit to bring to the table. And her last day at her job was February 2nd, I think. And she's now on a 7-week trip traveling across Asia, which was always like her dream to do. And she has the belief now of, I'm $1 million coach. And I told her last year, I was like, you got a 10K offer, girl. Like, it's not going to take that long. I was like, you got a 10K offer. And she's like, no. And now she's like, yeah, I'm a 10K coach. I'm on my way. So the next steps here, one thing that I would ask, it's one of two things. You either can do a transferable skill audit. I always think whenever you think that like, oh no, but I can't help that type of person, I'm like, well, what do they need? Like, what is it that they desire? And then what do they need? Like, work backwards from that. Can you help them do that? Yes or no? Because a lot of the times we make somebody's job title or who they are like mean something about our ability to help them, but we actually can help them, right? So do a transferable skill audit of like everything that you have that you just effortlessly bring to helping people. What are the things you notice that other people might not notice? What are all the lessons that you bring in that you fast track? Maybe it's failures are absolutely part of this. Like failures, nobody has more conviction than someone who's had stuff like not work out, right? So that is super, super important. Or doing belief bookmarking, which again has changed my life. Podcast episode 16 is on belief bookmarking. And I'll just share this so you could take a picture of it. But this, I drew it when I was doing the curriculum for reclamation. So in a nutshell, this is what came from my life of not trusting myself. You take a picture of this if it helps, but I'm a very visual person. What this is there's a belief bridge, right? So number one is, what do I believe about myself even on my worst day? Even on my shittiest day, I do always believe I care deeply about my clients. Even if you're like, but I don't have clients, but you'd be like, but I care deeply about them. And then I think here, number 5 is, what do you believe on your most confident day that helps you make money? And I purposely don't go to 10. That is explained in the curriculum. We won't talk about that right now, but I say your level 5 belief is, what do you believe about yourself on your most confident day? And I believe, and that makes me money. To me, my money-making emotion, F means pride. So your money-making emotion is pride, mine is, and my money-making thought is, I'm a good ass coach. So I think, how can I bottle up the feeling of pride, evidence of pride, and evidence that makes me feel like I'm a good ass coach? So then I think, when do I believe I'm a good ass coach? When do I feel proud? For me, this is my belief bookmarking plan. It's, I believe this and I feel this after a great client call, after I get interviewed, when clients have breakthroughs, when a client compliments me, when I get a yes on a sales call, when I coach, tough clients, like ones that really make me like, ooh, damn, am I a good coach? Like, can I help this person? And then they have a breakthrough. I'm like, oh my God, I love this so much. Like, it's just like the best moment, right? So how I bottle it up is I leave myself voice memos. Like it's just so easy to pick up my phone and leave myself a voice memo, and I will title it whatever that belief is that I want to bottle up. And it's to future me who's going to forget and lose the belief. I also will send self-hype voice notes to my friends, or I will celebrate in Slack, because it leaving your body is a way of you taking credit for it, right? When you keep it to yourself, it's so much easier to put it into bottomless bucket syndrome versus when you express it out loud, right? I also use the I Am app, which I would highly recommend. The I Am app, getting the $20 a year premium membership, because you can put your own beliefs in there and decide how often you want to receive them and what times of day. So I have money-making mantras. I have you're a good mom mantras, and they come to me at different times of day. So I've been doing this since 2021. The I Am app, highly recommend. And yes, celebrate in Slack. So this is belief bookmarking, which is the second part, but this is a visual. I've never shown this visual. This is a curriculum piece. So with this, hold on, I'm going to pause and look at the chat. Okay. Oh, thank you, Patty, for saying if you have questions, feel free. Doubled my corporate rate after realizing this. Yes. Oh, that was so nice. Here, I love that my clients are like, yes, I'm a testament to this. They're a testament to this. Thank you guys so much. I'm so grateful for y'all being here and just being willing to talk to folks. All right, we're going to wrap up. I know that we're getting towards the end here, so it's 11. So the final piece is marketing. The reason people doubt their marketing is because it feels personal. It feels like people are going to reject me personally. And it's just very easy to over-identify with your business. Like your business is you. But truthfully, also the reason people doubt their marketing is because a lot of bro marketing is about like, I have the secret and I'm gatekeeping it. And so people think that like there's one right way of doing it and that somebody holds the key. And that's not necessarily the case. There are concepts, but there's a difference between learning marketing as a tactic versus learning it as a skill, right? And so overthinking marketing, rampant, like absolutely rampant, thinking it needs to look a certain way. What often happens is you were doing something that was working and then you stopped doing it because somebody told you that doesn't follow the formula, or they didn't tell you, but you just made it up in your head of like, oh, well, they're doing it this way, so I have to follow the formula perfectly. Let me throw everything out and then just do the formula. And then as you're trying to market and figure out how to show up, your brain is loud and it's just trying to follow all these pieces. And that is not a good place to be. You're like, wait. Why am I doing this? Right? So this is what I call using other people's frameworks against yourself. In the simplest terms, I went to college. I got a master's degree. I have been marketing since 2003. Since before I'm ancient. Like there was no phones. There's no, the marketer is telling you, and in simplest terms, marketing is just awareness. People are aware a thing exists. And building a relationship with them, nurturing. That's all it is. You are aware, which requires visibility somehow, and then you nurture a relationship with them, period. That is not supposed to look the same by person. And this is where I'm like, why are you doing what you're doing, right? So if you know what's already been working for you in awareness, like how people are finding out about you, and if you're brand new, this might look a little different, and you already know like what's working for you in building trust, nurture relationships, you can double down on those things and not worry about all the other things, right? So in Reclamation, we do this through two tools. One is success receipts and one is the client brain bank. The client brain bank is like everything. Like don't do anything without that. Anytime you're like in your head, you go back to it and you're like, no. What is it? What are they saying? Client brain bank is basically a big ass bank of your client's words. What is it that they're struggling with? Why do they want to work with you specifically? What are the top misconceptions? What are the questions that they're asking? The most commonly asked questions, like on calls, like all those things, you go back to it and you're like, no, this is exactly like my marketing document. So Casey and Michelle, I don't know if you're still here, but I thought you were a great example of really doubling down on making your specific gifts more visible. because Michelle is just a phenomenal speaker. She's literally in the middle of an 8-city like speaking series now that she also did last year. She's just like, when she speaks, you listen, right? Like she's such a phenomenal speaker, and like she's dope. Like she had 6-figure years previously, but it was kind of encouraged in the past to like change the way she was marketing, change her actual offer, asking her like, why don't you like coach and expand beyond Latinas, and just like all of these things where I was like, wait, like why is that the direction, right? And so sometimes all that happens is you are successful and then your self-trust dips, so your income dips. And so what we did was we audited past successes. We streamlined her sales call process to make it a little bit more like, hey, like, let's make sure we're not even asking questions on the sales call process that isn't prepping people to like work with you, right? We looked at her success receipts and her client brain bank, and we looked at like, okay, no. Number one, Latinas are her audience. Like literally her entire offer is catered to Latinas. Her whole story is catered to Latinas. We're not going to change that. Speaking was her gift. This is how connections came, clients came, or she was referred to organizations. So I was like, no, if you love doing this, like double down on this, right? And so she didn't have to overhaul her business, but she joined us last summer, and just in the last half of last year, she doubled her income versus what she earned in the first half. And I haven't looked at your monthly report, but I know that as of a couple months ago, it was already like almost a 6-figure year in terms of contracts. And but also it isn't even just that, like she's helping phenomenal clients, like these level clients that she's like, damn, like past level me would have been like, woof, but this is who she helps. And it's like, so everything just up leveled. And it's like, it doesn't require overhauling your entire business, right? So the action item for marketing on how to make your gifts more visible, this is what I ask every client to do, is how do you create evidence as to why you're marketing the way you're marketing? So number one, begin a client brain bank. The client brain bank in reclamation has multiple parts, but the very first part that I would ask you all to do is look at your intake forms from ideally clients who decided to work with you, but even the ones who didn't, and what is their answer to why do you want to work with me, or why do you want to join this program, and put that in there. And then ChatGPT can kind of help you extract like the top ones. And then how can you make those strengths more public? Right? So the why do you want to work with me is typically like it's reflecting back your strengths. It's reflecting back something. And so that will help you figure out how can you make your strengths more public. So really, honestly, with this, if you were to take your thought leadership angles and you were to take what makes people want to work with you, and you were to just do that more publicly and base your marketing around that, maybe it's a series, that's why I did Telegram, because I was like, I can just show up and talk, but I'm serving on a bigger level. How can you serve on a bigger level? By doubling down on your thought leadership and making that more public. So recap the 3 areas where self-trust impacts business: how to make your messaging more potent by doubling in on your thought leadership, trusting your expertise, trusting your marketing. We shared the case studies about how clients have hit these goals of doubling income, elevating their client, selling at a higher price point. Like, we as entrepreneurs in this room, it is not normal to ask this much of yourself in terms of expansion, in terms of discomfort, in terms of risk taking, in terms of visibility. It is not normal. The majority of the population does not ask this much discomfort of themselves, which is why coming back to self-trust and safety and being supported in community shows you're not crazy, you're not unsafe. You look around and you're like, okay, no one's running. We're all right. This is why we need it. But this is what allows us to do these things. We couldn't do it. We weren't wired to do it. And that's what reclamation is really about, is like the things we maybe weren't wired to do, but we're doing anyway. And we made it like right at the hour and a half. I feel like I talked forever, which is very uncomfortable for me because I'm used to dialogue, but I hope it was good. So, all right, y'all. Thank you all. Bye.